I understand that, but you are attacking people who would like to lead us and tell us how the world works.
No, they don't want to tell us how the world works. They want to take over the decision for us. They don't tell the parents how they ought to teach sex education to their children. They put this material in the schools behind the backs of the parents with instructions not to let the parents see it.
I don't remember this name, but I can kind of stay with it.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest challenges. Is staying with it. That's the reason why I want to do audio and not me read it, because if I read it, I'll very often go to sleep.
Oh yeah, I did read it.
But they have a Bible study.
Yeah.
On here. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing, this Bible study thing, because not only do they read the book, they make it interesting because of theatrics.
Yeah.
So when you listen to it, it doesn't sound like this. Someone just reading. They've got like doom music, and then he made it like, you know what I mean? It's like keeps you awake. Because that's what I'm saying. If I just read it, then I'm gonna be like, this is so boring. But if they read it, they go, and then he made the beast, and then he came, da-dum, 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 da-dum. You know what I mean? And then he made the water, and it was. But I'm trying to stick with it because I want to read it all the way to Revelation. Whoosh.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the second half of this video. We are going to watch a Thomas Sowell video. It's 11 minutes scared, so it shouldn't be too bad. Anyways, this video is about, this is the vision of woke, right? I guess he didn't say this, but I think that he's like talking about like how this happened, how this can happen, how woke can happen. I believe this clip is from 1995.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So he's saying some stuff. He's saying some stuff that is happening basically now, or how it can happen. So we'll watch this and we'll periodically talk, I guess.
Well, it's a vision that the problems that we see in the world are due to the fact that other people are just not as bright or as compassionate as they are. And that there are all these solutions out there waiting to be discovered, and that they have them. And that these solutions are to be imposed upon the rest of us by the power of government, through taxation or in other ways. And what's really crucial about it is that their passion is so much greater than the passion on the other side, largely because what they have involved is more.
Who is the they?
Oh, the media elite, the academic elite, political elites. And the reason we can talk about their vision, even though they obviously vary in their opinions, is that the basic set of underlying assumptions about the world are very similar. And because these assumptions are the prevailing assumptions, the need to find evidence for them or to offer proof is much less. If something happens, they'll explain it in a way which will fit that vision. For example, when they find that prenatal care is less among blacks than among whites, and that infant mortality rates are higher, they immediately assume this is because of society's neglect, and therefore if only the government will step in and provide more prenatal care, that problem solves itself. But in reality, other groups have even less prenatal care than blacks and don't have any more infant mortality than whites. But they don't ever get to that second stage, because once they've seen something that fits their conception of how the world works, that's sort of the end of it.
Let me go back to that idea of who the they is.
So you got the New York Times, the Washington Post, Harvard, Stanford, all the usual suspects.
Hold on, let me pause it real quick. I believe this man is liberal, this guy. I believe the guy that, I think he's liberal. Anyways, he was thinking that maybe Thomas wasn't going to mention specifically the different, you know, the different news outlets that are doing this. Exactly who is they? You know, like, you know who they is. Everyone knows.
You know they.
Everyone knows who they is, but
the people who run the government, the people who run the media, the people who run Hollywood, the people who shape culture.
Yep, shadow government. There you go.
I think that when people say things like, more American wives are battered on Super Bowl Sunday, you see, than any other time of the year, and there's not a speck of evidence for that. That is calculated, because there is no data that could even be misinterpreted that way. In other words, because there is no data, period. And so, yes, but I think that 99% of the people who believe it are not calculating. And I think one of the reasons that it flies without even being challenged for evidence is that there is a certain vision of how the world is, and in that world, men are oppressing women, and therefore, when you say something like this, it fits the vision, and that's the end of it. There's no demand for evidence. There's a four-stage pattern, and in the first stage is what I call the crisis, and so we're hyped to believe that something is a terrible crisis for which something must be done. What was fascinating to me in doing the research for the book is that very often the thing that's said to be in crisis has often been getting better for years on end, but that gets ignored. Then the second stage is,
for example, infant mortality, to use one of the
I'm thinking about teenage pregnancy and venereal disease. Those things were getting better. Teenage pregnancy was going down for more than a decade before sex education was introduced. Venereal disease, syphilis in 1960s had only half the incidence that it had in 1950. So all these things are going down, yet we're said to need sex education to deal with this crisis, which is then manufactured. And again, this is where the calculated part comes in. Now, 99% of the people who hear this don't know that. But the reason they accept it is because they also share the same vision. And because this is consonant with that vision, they don't have to ask for evidence.
All right, so what's stage two?
Stage two is
the first one is there's a crisis.
Yes.
I'm sorry, hold on real quick. First one, for one, there's a crisis. Man, what does that even sound like? That sounds to me like a little bit of COVID. You know what I mean? It's always a stage one, and make it a pandemic.
We're going to lock everybody down for 2 weeks.
Mask
so
only.
To make sure that everybody's okay. Social distance. 2 years later.
Yeah.
People have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
People have lost their businesses. You know, the whole world is walking around with a diaper on their face. You know what I mean? And then we must get there. We must get
the poke.
we should get the poke. I mean, we
poke.
all have to
You
get
gotta
it.
get it.
Because if you don't, then you're the problem.
You're the problem.
So let's shame everybody to do this. It's,
So,
it's just manufactured.
Yeah,
you know?
I like his stage one. I like how he broke that down. It's like the stage one is you introduce a crisis. A crisis that's not necessarily.
And they already have a remedy.
Yeah.
That's what they want to introduce.
Establish a crisis, usually an artificial one.
Yes. Okay. Then stage two is the solution. You have a solution for this crisis. In this case, you have sex education in the schools. And then at that point, you say, if we do this, this will lead to beneficial result A. The critics say, no, it'll lead to detrimental result Z. Stage three, you put it into the results, you put it in, and directly you find detrimental result Z, namely venereal disease and teenage pregnancy take off into the stratosphere. And then stage four is the fascinating part, in which they simply say, no, that doesn't prove that this was a bad policy, because there are many factors. There's complexity. It's simplistic to blame it on this. But they run through this routine on so many different things, including crime. Similarly, they said, in 1960, Judge Bazelon said we just desperately need to have some kind of change in the criminal justice system. Now, in 1960, there were fewer murders than there had been in 1950, 1940, or 1930. But again, that was completely ignored. And so now we have the revolution in the criminal justice system. People say, no, if you have put these new things in, there'll be more crime than before. They put them in. Almost instantly, the declining crime rate turns around and heads up again. And they say, no, it's simplistic to blame this on this. There are the root causes and the neglect of society and all the rest of it. So it's heads I win, tails you lose.
You think the increase in venereal disease was caused by sex education?
I don't have to even say that. I don't even have to believe that. All I have to say is
do you?
Oh, I think it's hard to explain otherwise. I mean, you don't get social changes that drastic in a few years without some particular cause. But the argument doesn't depend on that at all. The point is, they created the crisis artificially. The evidence shows there was no crisis, but they would not even subject it to any empirical test. If they want to show some other factor came in and really caused this, I'm happy to hear that.
Now, why would a group of liberal intellectuals or politicians or media stars or whatever, why would they sit around and decide to dismember or dilute the criminal justice system if they thought in advance that it would raise the amount of criminality?
Oh, they didn't think that, but the point is,
they just thought wrongly that it would help.
Yes, but it would also give them an enormously larger role than they had before. I mean, a judge who just sits there and applies.
It's okay. So they've introduced a problem, and they started a problem, and they also have a solution. Come on.
Like, right, like what I was saying. They already had the vaccine.
Right.
Like, Donald Trump, which is what most black, I disagree with him on the whole vaccine thing because he's like, oh, God, my was warp speed, Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah.
And you must take it. My vaccine is, where I was,
I didn't believe Donald Trump.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense. You can't make people take a vaccine.
Yeah.
And he was actually for that too, and then he changed his mind.
Yeah.
But
because the country did.
That's just it. They create a problem. You know what I mean? Without giving you all of the information.
Yeah.
And then we all believe it.
Right.
And then they just so happen to have the
solution.
antidote.
Yeah,
and
the solution
right there.
Yeah, right there.
For you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
it's for their gain for themselves.
And it's mostly like what he's saying. It has nothing to do with the problem. It has everything about to do with the power they plan to get.
Right.
With women feeling like men oppress them. With black people feeling like they got white people got their boot on their neck. You know what I mean? With gay people feeling like even though they're walking around here, with kids and marriage and all of that,
making welfare of their husbands.
Right, all of this stuff. And then even though we have freedom right there in our face. We will choose to believe the victimization clause, and they always have something there, a net.
It's like it's about gaining power. They want power over us. And so that's why they implement these problems and then conveniently have a solution.
As the laws that have been passed by the legislature has a very minor role. But if he takes the expansive judicial activist role, then of course he's on the leading edge. Similarly with the war on poverty, you can show how dependency on government was going down, poverty was going down before this program was ever put in. And within a few years, dependence on government was going up, and after a few more years, the absolute number of people in poverty was going up. This was sold to the country, not on the grounds that if you transferred money from A to B, that B would have more money. That was not the argument. The argument was that dependency would be reduced. This will then, you give them job training and all those kinds of things, parenting skills, the whole bit. And this will then be an investment that will pay off in the future because there'll be fewer people dependent upon the government than there were before. And I go through a great number of people from John F. Kennedy to Lyndon Johnson, the New York Times, again, all the usual suspects. The first order of business is to evade the criterion that they themselves set up when they set this out. And so no matter what happens, if it's a failure by the original criterion, then we just find another criterion by which it will be a success.
A lot of the things that came out of the Great Society, building all those junior colleges and community colleges.
Oh, I would disagree entirely. I think that was a tragedy of the first magnitude.
That was a tragedy.
Yes.
Why is that a tragedy?
You have millions of people who have absolutely no desire for an education, using up billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money, and not only not getting an education themselves, making it more difficult to give an education to those people who came to college with an idea of getting one.
Now you say they have no desire for an education. I mean, nobody is herding them into these community colleges and into the junior colleges and into the state university. I mean, they have a desire, obviously.
No, they do not, obviously, because lots of things go on in those places that are not education. I mean, where else can you find so many young people of the same age and opposite sex in one place? A nice, convenient place to be. But anyone who is taught in a lot of these places, this ferocious desire for education as such is not terribly visible.
We've set up a society where you have to be credentialed with a certain amount of college, so aren't they able to get a better job?
No,
because
this is the fallacy of composition. If one person stands up in the stadium, he sees the game better, but if they all stand up, they don't all see the game better. As long as, if you have a degree and the other guy doesn't, then you get ahead of him in the employment line. But we're not going to all get ahead of each other in the employment line by all getting degrees.
We have to get more people into the education system because that's the way to compete, and we look at the data and we see that the people with more education are earning more money than ever before relative to the people with less education. That's all a fallacy of everybody standing up in the stadium.
People who fly on the Concorde, kids who've flown on the Concorde undoubtedly will make more money than kids who've only gone on buses. That does not mean if we put a lot of people on the Concorde, we're going to raise the national income.
Okay, so what's happening right now is that this other man is probably pretty shocked that a Stanford University man is not saying everyone should go to college. Because what happens is that a lot of these people will say, college people who are scholars, they'll say college is an absolute must. What he is saying is that maybe for you it might not be, it might be detrimental actually for your life. You know what I mean? And then for some people,
and we do know that because there are a lot of
people.
people who go to big universities and then they quit to bake cookies.
Yep.
So a lot of people generally, and there are a lot of people who start businesses and they hire people that go to college.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go to start the business. And the truth is that usually on the job training gets you further than sitting in a classroom for 4 years, depending on what you're going to school for.
Right.
You know, that is a fact, but it's always being pushed down kids' throats. Which Ben Shapiro was saying that if you're going to send your kid to college these days, he's like, make sure you homeschool them first, and then let them be ahead of the university.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if they only go to public school, they're only getting a liberal.
Yeah.
They will not be able to fight the professors down. They will be lost in activism. But if you can homeschool your kids' values, which they'll
go there with a purpose.
They will go there for a purpose,
and
they won't get sucked into the little demonic group of activism and
those people become professional students.
Right. And also a lot of these people that are like doing the gender studies and any of those African American studies, they have a hard time finding jobs after they graduate because there are no jobs for those people.
No,
unless you become a professor.
Yeah, in the long run, a trend is not going to make you the money you need to be made.
And by the way, his point is true because even with liberals tell everybody to go to college because everybody in college is liberal. But the problem is now, like he was saying about, they always have the antidote. And the problem is like now, kids want student loan forgiveness. They were told to go to school, and now their degree means jack because you can't get a job with gender studies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And African American studies and all these other like things, women's studies, they have one for that too. And these people are going and majoring in these areas, and then when they graduate, they have this huge amount of debt and they have no job to back up the degree. And so it's just like now they want the taxpayers to forgive.
Right.
And so that's what the Democrats now then use.
You can't blame the crime rate on the fact that there's more poverty, there's less poverty, there's more affluence. It's not due to foreigners because, as you say, we've won the Cold War. All the normal things that you might blame all this on aren't there. It's not because of diseases, because science has conquered more diseases. It's all because of self-inflicted wounds. And I'm saying these are the people who inflicted those wounds, and this is why we shouldn't listen to them anymore.
What are the nature of those wounds?
Crime.
No.
The disintegration of the family, the disintegration of the educational system, and it's not going to matter. We'll be like the man who gained the whole world and lost his soul.
Is there a common root to all of those problems?
It's the notion that ordinary people cannot be trusted to make the decisions that they've been making, but these must be preempted either by judges in the case of crime, by the schools taking over the indoctrination of other people's children behind their back and against their protests, or what was the other one? The family, taking money from the taxpayers and subsidizing behavior, as well as encouraging it and legitimizing behavior that has turned out to be enormously self-destructive, undermining the family in 1,000 different ways.
You make this vigorous attack in the Vision of the Anointed that we should no longer listen to these people. That's sort of the debate. They've been wrong. They don't prove their points. It's hurt us. Who should we listen to?
We should listen first and foremost to our own experience. You seem to act as if there must be alternative saviors. We should stop looking for saviors.
Yes.
When the society has not existed for thousands of years because it had a succession of saviors.
Stop looking for saviors.
You were saying earlier about no one's going to save you. Like we got to stop looking at politicians, for instance. You know, people who say think about politicians are all the same. That's not exact. You're not supposed to be putting all your energy into a person. You should never do that. That's why it's good to have faith.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to have your family decisions. You know what I mean? Because when you put your minds and your hearts and everything into people, they disappoint you. They lie to you. They deceive you. You know what I mean? And so that's basically what he's saying here, which I agree with. I think that you need to think of your own experience.
That your own experience is going to guide you to where you need to be.
Right.
So basically, I have never experienced prior being broken homeless, but I became broken homeless at one point in my life. My own experience helped me get to like where I am now. Still have ways to go, but I'm just saying that experience helped me. You know what I mean? I didn't go and try to get somebody in to save me.
Right.
I didn't go and try to find a leader to lead me
Right.
to the right way. No, the only person that's going to fix this is Danielle. That's it.
You can make your own decisions for yourself.
You'll have help along the way.
And I would say that what made me more conservative was the fact that I lost everything.
Yeah, it did.
It should have made me more liberal.
But it didn't.
But it didn't. It actually made me more aware of myself and my choices.
Right.
And to make different choices and better choices. And so with that
there is no savior.
I agree with him on that.
There's no savior.
There is no savior. Not a Republican or a Democrat. But when you do vote, you need to understand that where your values lie. Because like I said, one of the reasons I was a Democrat is one, because I was black, but two is because I was voting on other people's experience. I never was on welfare, so why do I care?
Why do I care?
You know what I mean? And my experience has been, my mother was never on welfare.
So that's why.
As a single mother. So my experience is if you work hard, you don't even need that system. So why am I voting for that system? Yeah, I was also I never agreed with abortion, but I'd vote pro-choice because I thought, well, maybe some other girl needs it. But I just don't agree with it. You know what I mean? And that's me voting on someone else's experience. And what he's trying to say is you got to look at your own life. And that's how you dictate the decisions you make.
Outside of God, there is no savior.
Right.
So if you want to go and find something on the outside, you need to go to God. And guess what? That's on the inside too. Right. God's on the inside too. So don't go try to find some leader in a cause, in a group, and a blah, blah, blah. Those are not going to save you. Only you are going to save you. It's really smart.
Existed because it has institutions and processes through which people can realize their own goals.
No, I understand that, but you are attacking people who would like to lead us and tell us how the world works.
No, they don't want to tell us how the world works. They want to take over the decision for us. They don't tell the parents how they ought to teach sex education to their children. They put this material in the schools behind the backs of the parents with instructions not to let the parents see it.
Okay, so first of all, that last part that he said, that's what's happening. This is in 1995. That is what they're doing now in schools. They're putting things in schools behind the parents' backs. The parents are finding out when their kids come home with curriculum or just common talk, dinner table talk, and they're finding out what their children are learning in school. Yeah. These same parents have to now go to the school and complain about you trying to teach my child, values. I teach my child values. So he's right. They're implementing things in schools. They're not trying to help. They're not trying to lead. They're trying to implement things to gain control
over your mind. And the younger you are, the easier it is. That's the reason, because I thought that for a long time, I thought that public education was something we always did in America. I did not realize that, it hasn't even been it hasn't really been around that long in America. That we were usually in little classrooms where, where one room class, one room grade, several grades in one room, or homeschool. That was the norm. And when public education came around, because they said in the Constitution, there's nothing about education in the Constitution.
Right.
Because you're supposed to really teach your kids. And when public school came around, they started taking things away like prayer, because we used to pray in school. Right. I didn't realize that, because they didn't have that by the time I was in school. But they used to do the Pledge of Allegiance. But they said they started to slowly take things away because public education wants to control your kids when you're at work. This was the need of women being at home. Right. It wasn't to keep women oppressed because women weren't oppressed. It was that while men made money, women really homeschooled their kids, but they were also in control of their children. The reason why a lot of kids are so messed up today is because mothers are out working and our cell phones are watching our kids. So they're literally listening and they're usually using screens to keep their kids.
Yeah, this is all design. Yeah, all this is about control.
I mean, if I'm ever blessed to have children through myself or through adoption, I would rather homeschool my kids.
I would too.
You know what I mean? Because I don't like or a private school that is reputable. Yeah. I believe that kids need to have their parents in charge of them, not the state. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I feel like that is what's happening over time. That's been happening. I mean, this was in 1995, but this has been in the works since the 20s, the early trying to get kids away from their parents. Because the younger the mind is, the more it is easier to control. It's true. You know what I mean? Like you have the things that kids are learning. And the funny thing about the pandemic was the reason why you see all these parents at these PTA or these conferences where they're calling out the school board. Is because they didn't realize what their kids' curriculum was, what these schools are teaching their kids when they're not around, and it's pretty bad.
Did he not just say that? That's the
It's
idea.
horrible,
The
actually.
idea is going behind their back, and he's right. He's right. This is why I say listen to people like this, because he foresaw what was going to happen, and it's not because he's some psychic. It's not about that. It's about logic, and then he's on the inside understanding what they're trying to implement.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's actually correct.
So,
That's part of a longer video, by the way, you guys. I'll try to find the full interview. I think it's like an hour and something long with this man. I'll try, if I find it, I'm gonna link it below for you guys so you guys can watch it. But yeah, let us know what you think about all this. I'm really curious to know how you guys feel about this, or what you think about Thomas Sowell in general, or just other people who.
Yeah, I mean, even like Milton Friedman. If you do want to know other people,
yeah,
like
really
Milton
good.
Friedman has there's old shows on YouTube. It's called Free to Choose.
Yeah, Free to
and
Choose.
it's just you'll see Walter Williams on there. They have all kinds of different.
Such good.
It's really good debates from both liberal and conservative perspectives, but it's all from the late 70s. But it matters.
It's relevant
now.
now.
And so if you watch those it's called Free to Choose. If you watch all those like documentaries where we actually did debate right, you know what I mean? You will see how much things have changed and how quickly things have changed. And that was always kind of in the works. You can kind of just see it.
And now here we are.
Yeah.
So let us know what you guys think. So leave some comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and that's it. We will see you guys next week. Bye.